Let's talk about a simple card game. Just 4 decks of cards. But believe me, this isn't about gambling. This is the story of a scientific experiment that, almost by accident, stumbled upon one of the biggest secrets of the human brain: how we really make decisions. You know, it all started with this deep mystery that really bugged neuroscientists for years. We've all seen it, right? Someone who is incredibly smart, high IQ, totally logical, but they just make one catastrophic choice after another, completely wrecking their career, their finances, their entire life. How on earth is that possible? Well, the first big clue came from a really specific group of patients. These were people who had suffered brain damage, but it was a kind of damage that produced this truly baffling set of symptoms. Okay, so the injury was in this tiny part of the brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Now here's the really weird part. Their intelligence? Totally fine. They had normal IQs, their memory was perfect, and they could ace any logic test you threw at them. And yet, out in the real world, their lives were just completely falling apart. It was almost like they were blind to the future consequences of their own actions. This puzzle led a neuroscientist named Antonio Damasio to come up with a pretty revolutionary idea. He thought, what if pure logic just isn't enough? What if these patients were missing something more primal, something we tend to just brush off as being irrational? He called it the somatic marker hypothesis. And the big idea here is that our decisions aren't just cold, hard calculations. Instead, our body is constantly sending us these little signals, what we call gut feelings. These are actual physical sensations that mark certain choices as good or bad, kind of steering us in the right direction long before our conscious, analytical brain has time to do all the math. And Damasio put it perfectly himself. He said that when you even think about making a bad choice, your body physically reacts. You get that little knot in your stomach, that sense of dread. That is a somatic marker. It's your emotions acting as a vital advisor to your reason. So Damasio's big theory was this: that damaged brain region, the VMPFC, is what lets us hear those gut feelings. Without it, these patients were like a ship's captain with a perfect map of the ocean, but no compass. They had all the logical information in the world, but absolutely no internal guidance to help them navigate. This was a fantastic theory, but how could you possibly test it? It's not like you can ask people to make life-ruining decisions inside a lab. So, Damasio's team came up with this really elegant experiment to simulate the problem. It's now famously known as the Iowa gambling task. Okay, so the setup is super simple. Picture this. You sit down at a table, you're given $2,000 in play money, and in front of you are 4 decks of cards. You get 100 chances to pick a card from any deck you want. The goal is simple: end up with as much money as you can. The only catch? You have no idea what the rules are. You just have to figure it out as you go. And here's the hidden trap the scientists set. Decks A and B, they look great. They offer a big, fat $100 reward every single time. But hidden inside are these devastating penalties. Deck A hits you often with small losses, while Deck B has this rare but absolutely catastrophic loss. In the long run, they're both losers. Now, Decks C and D, they're kind of boring, only $50 a pop. But their penalties are tiny, and over time, they are the only way to actually win the game. So really, the whole game boils down to this one fundamental conflict. Are you going to chase the thrilling, high rewards from the bad decks, which will eventually bankrupt you? Or are you going to play the slow, steady, and, let's be honest, kind of boring game with the good decks to get that long-term win? It's really a choice between being short-sighted or being foresighted. And the results were just incredible. The healthy people, they'd start out exploring, but after a while, they started to get a hunch. They couldn't explain it logically just yet, but they started to feel that decks A and B were dangerous, and they naturally drifted towards C and D. The VMPFC patients, on the other hand, did exactly what the theory predicted. They just kept hammering away at those high-reward decks, totally unable to learn from the massive punishments, and they consistently went broke. It seemed like the perfect proof for the somatic marker hypothesis. But, science is never quite that simple. When researchers looked a little closer at the data from the healthy people, they found something strange. A little anomaly. A plot twist that made the whole story a lot more complicated. They called it the prominent Deck B phenomenon. Turns out even the healthy people who basically figured out the game were still weirdly attracted to Deck B. I mean, they chose it twice as often as Deck A, the other bad deck. They were still losing money with it, but something about Deck B was just uniquely seductive. So this created a brand new puzzle. Logically, Deck A and Deck B are identical. Their final outcome is exactly the same. They both lose you $250 over 10 cards. So why on earth would our supposedly rational brains have such a huge preference for one losing deck over the other? What was going on? And the answer to that question revealed something even deeper, even more fundamental about how all of our brains are wired. See, it turns out we're not just calculating the final score. There's another, much more primitive force at play. Here's the key. The long-term outcome, what you could call the expected value, it's the same for both bad decks. But the short-term experience, the gain-loss frequency, is completely different. Deck A punishes you constantly. 5 times every 10 cards. It feels punishing. But Deck B, it almost never punishes you. You get 9 amazing wins in a row before, bam, that one massive devastating loss. And this is the big revelation. Our brains are hardwired to be myopic or short-sighted. We are incredibly sensitive to the frequency of punishment. We will actively avoid small, regular pains, even if it means setting ourselves up for a much bigger, more catastrophic failure later on. Deck B simply feels better to play, even though in the end, it's just as bad for our wallet. So, what began as a journey to understand a very specific kind of brain damage, well, it ended up uncovering a fundamental and, honestly, a kinda unsettling truth about all of our brains. So, the ultimate lesson here isn't just that gut feelings are important. The deeper truth is that our internal guidance system has a powerful myopic bias built right in. It's designed to make us avoid frequent, small discomforts, even if that means we walk straight into a huge disaster down the road. And this affects everything: what we eat, how we spend our money, our biggest life goals. And that leaves us with this one last, really provocative thought to chew on. If we know that our brains have this powerful, short-sighted impulse just hardwired into them, how much of our daily struggle for self-discipline, foresight, for making the right long-term choice is really just a battle against our own fundamental nature? Is true, pure rationality something we can ever really achieve? Or are we all just managing this inherent bias day in and day out?